All right, Generation Ziegler community, welcome again to our weekly calls. This is call number 12. Is that right, Isaiah? Is that call number 12? Is that what you and I figured out?
I think that's what we were talking about.
Yep, we're call number 12, and we're excited. This again has evolved into something really great. We have a good group that comes and attends with us on the calls live that are able to ask questions and interact. And then for the hundreds of you that are viewing live on Facebook as we go forward and that will watch it on YouTube once we load that up on YouTube tomorrow or Monday, we want to thank you as well. Today, we're really honored to have with us a new friend of mine, Mr. Phil Boyte, who lives here in North Carolina, but originally from California, correct?
Yep. That's
one of the nation's leaders in school culture. Is going to talk with us some about that. And a mutual friend of ours said that he was one of the wisest people that you're going to meet. He said, if you have the opportunity just to sit and ask him questions, do so. That was a mutual friend, Patty Hendrickson, said that you were one of the wisest people she knows as far as working with this. So, Phil, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to our Generation Ziegler community, tell them how you got started and what exactly you work with in culture as well.
Well, you bet. Well, first, Patty Hendrickson, wise equals old sometimes. So that, we just take it. And so those of you that are tuned in, listening, thank you. That's awesome. Hope we can bring a little value to the experience. My background, I grew up in leadership stuff in high school, California. I was an officer, state student council. So I went off to university in Northern California, a little place called Chico. And I went to some local schools, said, hey, I have this experience in high school. And they said, here, talk to our leadership kids. And then all of a sudden I started doing summer camps in the summer. And it was kind of funny because at my heart, I was an entrepreneur. And I got to believe some of y'all that are listening, maybe you're entrepreneurs. When I was a little kid, all my friends would sell Kool-Aid, but there'd be like 6 Kool-Aid stands going at once. So I thought that's kind of dumb. So I walked down about a mile to the grocery store. I bought a bag of Brock's candy. You could buy this candy by the pound. And I'd buy about $2 worth. I'd come out, lay it out, sell each piece for 5 cents a piece, and I'd make about $10 for that $2. And all the other kids in the neighborhood thought it was the coolest thing because they could use their Kool-Aid money to buy my candy. So when I was at Chico, I was working at a shoe store, and a guy came in and started washing the windows. I'd never seen a window washer, and I said, hey, how much do you make doing that? He said, about $12 an hour. Well, I was making $3 an hour at that time, minimum wage. I found out he was leaving town, so I started a little window washing company, took all of his business because he left. And when I graduated from Chico State with my teaching credential, I sold that business for $40,000. And so all of a sudden I was this college kid, all my friends had debt, and I made 40 grand. And I wanted to be a speaker. And so most of y'all have been to some kind of FFA or FBLA or DECA or some kind of conference. Well, I went to those for student council, saw the speakers and said, I'd like to do that someday. And so while I was in college, I went around to these schools and did it for free. And then eventually someone said, what do you charge? I said, what'd you charge the guy? What'd you pay the guy last year? They said $200. I said, great. So all of a sudden they paid me $200 to do an hour assembly. And then about 3 years later, a principal said, hey, I need some help with this leadership thing on Saturday. And I said, great, I'll be there. And he said, what do you charge? I said, what'd you pay the guy last year? He said, $500. I was like, yeah, I'll do it for that. So all of a sudden I made $500. And what I was focused on was trying to be a good enough speaker that they'd tell their friends. When I was in the window washing business, every time I got done washing someone's windows at their house, I would just go to the 5 houses nearby, the one next door, 3 across the street, and the other one next door. And I knock on the door and say, hey, I just washed these people's windows. I can give you a bid. Well, if people trust their neighbors, then they trusted me. And so all of a sudden my business exploded. And instead of making $30 for washing their windows for the next week, I washed everybody in the neighborhood's windows. And so I just started listening to business people and learning how to do this. So all of a sudden I was in the speaking business. This guy said to me at the end of that leadership Saturday, he goes, hey, he said, I love what you did with the kids. You got them involved. He said, our freshman orientation is really bad. He said, freshmen come in, about 400 of them. They're excited about high school. 4 hours later, they don't want to go to high school because we bored them to death. Could you do at our freshman orientation what you just did for my leadership kids? And I'm like, sure. So I came back in August. I trained about 50 high school juniors and seniors to help me out. And we did this freshman orientation where I did about a half-hour talk, and then each senior took 10 freshmen, took them on a tour, set them down for an hour, and just did a bunch of team building activities with them. And all of a sudden he goes, that was awesome. He said, will you come back next year? I said, sure. And then his neighbor schools called, and he said, what do you call this? I said, well, we call it Link Crew. We link seniors with incoming freshmen. And all of a sudden people started asking me to do that so much, I couldn't do them all. So I said, how about if I train the teacher to do it? So the first year I trained 9 teachers to do it at their school. The next year, 26 teachers. The next year, 75 teachers. When I sold that to my employees, we were training 650 teachers a year to do Link Crew at their own school. And I've got to believe some of the people listening here probably do Link Crew at their school, or they've heard of it, or Web at the middle school. I see some of y'all nodding your heads, and that's pretty cool because I created that in 1993, and here we are, 2020, it's still going. And I remember talking to the class of 007, class of 2007. They thought they were the coolest class ever because of 007. And now that was 13 years ago. And so that's kind of my background of how this entrepreneurship as a little kid turned into washing windows and selling that business, and then starting this Link Crew. I sold that business, created a program now called Breaking Down the Walls, where we go into schools and work on culture. So kids are like, I can talk to anybody. And then 5 years ago, wrote the book called School Culture by Design. And now most of my work is either breaking down the walls or working with teachers to try to create a school that no one wants to leave. So that's a little bit about my story.
Now, you mentioned that most of your work right now is dealing with school culture. What do you mean by school culture, and why does it even matter these days?
Well, there's 2 words that I used to use interchangeably, and I realize they're different. There's climate and there's culture. Think about climate. Climate, if y'all think about it, it's your weather. If someone right now is from Ohio, they might say it's 72 degrees out there and it's beautiful. Somebody from Minnesota might go, it's 83 degrees and it's a little humid. Those of us in North Dakota, North Carolina are going, man, it's been so hot today because this storm's coming in. It's only 75, but it's probably 95% humidity. That's climate. And that can change from day to day, from hour to hour. Culture is how we treat each other. It's traditions. It's habits. I was at the golf course a while back. It was kind of cute because these little boys I was practicing putting for, I went out to golf, and these little 7, 8-year-old kids were running around putting. All of a sudden, this older man said, hey, boys, come here. Yes, Mr. Andre. And he said, hey, we're going to start the lesson, but I got to ask you something. He said, you guys remember what etiquette is? And one of the little boys said, yeah, etiquette, that's like table manners. He goes, that's right. He said, what's the etiquette on a green before we're playing, when we're putting? Little boy says, you never run in front of someone else's ball. And the other little boy said, oh, I just did it to that man. Should I go tell him I'm sorry? And Andre smiled and said, no, I think he heard us. And I thought, how cool is that to tie it into language a little kid could understand? Is etiquette is table manners. And many of you listening, you were taught as a little kid, if you sneeze, you say, bless you, excuse me, or if you have to get up from the table, some of you are taught you ask for permission, may I please get up? Or some of you are taught the culture of nobody starts to eat until the last person sits down. And some of y'all are at a restaurant, and it's always frustrating when they deliver 5 people's food, but the 6th person in it, you're like, my food's getting cold, but I'm not going to eat till yours gets here. That's culture. That's behavior. That's how we treat each other. Climate is the feeling for the day, a championship football season, or maybe there's a death on campus, and all of a sudden, man, the climate's down for a week, or the climate's up for a week. But culture, that's how we treat each other on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I see culture as, and that's why it matters, because it's our habits. You know, do we say please? Do we say thank you? Do we hold doors for people?
So how can these young people that are on here influence their culture in the school? I mean, what are some practical things that they can do?
Well, if you're a high school kid, you have about 3 or 4 different places of influence. You can influence the culture in the hallways. You bump somebody, oh, excuse me. You know, you're opening your locker and you look before you open and smack somebody, or you're standing with a group of friends. Sometimes people, because it's easy, they stand on the stairs and then people can't get around you. Well, how hard is it to look at your friends? Hey guys, let's step over here. You know, right now in our culture, if someone picks on a special needs kid, usually someone says, hey, quit that. That's not cool. But what happens if you're in the bleachers at a football game and somebody starts yelling something inappropriate to the other team, or at a basketball game where you can hear it? One of the places of influence you have is in that large group in the hallways, or in a football stadium. You say, hey, we don't do that at our school. Hey, we don't do that here. Another place you have influence in the lunchroom. You can affect the culture in the lunchroom. Why? Because everybody has their space. Try this because I speak at schools all over the continent. I get there, sometimes I speak in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. But one of the things that's always funny is if I get there about lunchtime. I was in a school one time in California, Santa Cruz area, Aptos High School. And I got there about 10 minutes before the bell rang for lunch. I wasn't going to speak till after lunch. So I just sat on this table. You know how you do, kind of sit up on the table, not on the chair. And I sat up on the table outside. And it was funny because these kids came out because they all go to the same spot to eat lunch. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting on their table. I'm this 45-year-old guy, and they didn't know what to do. They started circling. It was hilarious because you could see. And finally, I looked at the kid. Is this your table? He goes, yes, sir. I said, well, come here. He says, what? I said, why don't you talk to me? I'm the speaker today. And all of a sudden, his friends surrounded me, and it was easy, but they didn't know what. If you're in high school right now, you know where to find anybody at any time at lunchtime. So you can walk. If you're off campus, you know they're going to get in that car, go to Taco Bell. If it's on campus, you know they're going to hang out with the band kids are here, the football players are here. Well, that's a place you can influence the culture by engaging people, encouraging people. Another place is in class. How do you enter class? Do you walk into class, you got your earbuds in, and you just you tune them out. You sit down, you kind of get your stuff unpacked. I heard one girl in Oklahoma say, you know what I realized about I can influence the culture of our classroom by the way I walk in. She said, I'm going to make the commitment to take my earbuds out. When I walk in that class, I'm going to say hi to 5 different people and try to say hi to 5 people that I don't always talk to. Because you always talk to, I call them the magic 4. You know, the 4 people you can talk to at any time and the teacher doesn't know it. The kid right in front of you, the kid right behind you, the kid to your left, kid to your right. Well, you talk to them almost all the time, right? Hey, I need to borrow a pencil, or hey, is this the homework? But then those other kids that are 2 rows over or 3 seats back, and she said, I want to pull my earbuds out and say hi to those people. And you think about this. You're a high school kid and you make a commitment to take your earbuds out and engage with people. It sets the tone for the class. And one kid said, I want to do 10 by 10. I said, what's that? I want to say hi to 10 different people every day before 10 a.m. People I don't know. They're walking down the halls and just so you see, those are things that affect the culture. Because all of a sudden, a new kid at your school goes, people are so friendly here. Or that kid in your class that nobody talks to, all of a sudden you look them in the eye and say, good morning, what's up, what's new? When you say, how are you? They're going to say, fine. But if you say, what's new? Like, I got my driver's license. I made the volleyball team. So I think those are some ways that these students can influence culture on their school campus.
Is that you got a program called Better Together? Is that kind of the essence, what you're talking about here, some of those tips? Is that part of that program?
Better Together is just what I wear on my shirt because I believe we're better together. The breaking down the walls is the idea of you guys know at lunchtime, if you're in high school, even college, this happens at work. Some of y'all are corporate people or maybe we got some educators. I bet Miss Shelley, you walk in the lunchroom and the same people sit together every time. They got this little clique, that little clique. Well, what would happen if we took 1 or 2 kids from every one of those cliques and brought them together for 6 hours in the gym and we laughed and we played, and by the end of the day kids walk out going, I could talk to anybody. Because some of y'all go to small schools, you might have a graduating class of 60, 70 kids. Well, you know, by 8th grade everybody's labeled, everybody's slow reader, smart leader, partier, drunkie, druggie. Well, how do you ever get past that? One big kid in Mississippi, he looked at me almost in tears as I talking to everybody. He says, you know, everybody just looks at me as an athlete. He said, I am. I'm going to be a D1 athlete. I'm going to go play football in college. But he says, do you guys know I play 4 instruments? He said, I have a little sister with autism. He said, I'm amazing big brother. So my grandpa died last year. And after football practice, I take my buddies to my grandma. She always makes us cookies. He said, there's so much more to me than just football. And what was so cool was the kids at the school went, we didn't know that. We just see you as big number 96. And you wear that jersey on Fridays. We celebrate you. And he said, yeah. He said, someday I'll play the violin for you. And some of you are nodding because you're like, yeah, there's people like that, not just kids. One school I spoke at in California, Placer High School, the custodian is an amazing musician. He sings, he plays a guitar. He does this at his church all the time. How cool would it be to put him out in front of the school at a rally and let kids, because, you know, sometimes a custodian feels like a ghost at your school. He's everywhere and nobody even sees him.
Isaiah?
Yeah, so I was wondering, Phil, you're talking about all these cool practical tips we have that we can change the culture. But as I'm looking back, I know that I wasn't always, and not all of my friends were the type who found it easy to reach out, who found it easy to take the earbuds out and do it. What are some tips you have when it comes to preparing yourself or getting yourself in that mindset where you're willing to do what it takes to stand up and start changing the culture yourself?
Well, Isaac, great question. I think so many times we have this perception that the student body president needs to do that, or the cheerleader, or the football player, the person who jumps the ball in the basketball game, or the band major. But the truth is, to take your earbuds out, it's a personal choice. It makes you available. And see, here's the deal. One of the things that I used to have a guy play basketball for 40 years. On the court, he'd always say, make yourself available, make yourself available. That's what he meant. Go out, come off a pick, come around where they throw you to pass. Well, that became a real core value for me, was make myself available to my neighbors, for the kids in the class. Think about this. Many of you are starting to develop a new career. So maybe you're working at Subway or Starbucks or Phil's Coffee, wherever you're at. What if you made yourself available as much as possible? If the garbage needs to be taken out, hey, I'll get that. You know, those aren't huge leadership things, but everybody notices them. You know, everybody sees the little thing. I love the core value of 5 minutes, 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late. Be 15 minutes early everywhere you go. Why? Because that way, if you have an issue where you're a little bit slow, then, okay, so what? There was an accident. It took a little while to get around it. There was a train. But if you have a core value of 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late, be there 15 minutes early, and then you're available if someone has an emergency, they have to duck out, or someone needs to talk. Those aren't high-profile leadership things. Those are things that any one of us, we can be an introvert, we can be an extrovert. Most of us are somewhere in between. When we make ourselves available, that's all she meant by taking the earbuds out. She may not have to say anything, but now she's available. If I got my earbuds in, that means I'm not available. How many have ever said to someone, hi to someone, you realize they had their earbuds in, and you're like, I'm awkward. So.
Or the ones that talk to themselves with the Bluetooth, and you're in the store and you're like, what'd you, and then.
Yeah.
Caden knows what I'm talking about. He's cracking up because he says hi to everybody.
Yeah. Well, think about it, Caden. You have a brand. People see you coming. They know you're going to say hi, so they're ready to say hi back. Try this, guys. Try the 10 by 10 for a week and see what happens. Here's what I know. When I do it, because I'm in airports, I'm in malls, I'm at the gym. Hi, how's it going? Most people will not initiate the hello, but they will respond. If you say, hey, good morning. Hey, how's it going? You look great today. Did you have a good workout? Hey, I'm glad you're in math today. Whatever you say, most of them are shocked, like, hey, how's it going? Well, you do that 3 days in a row, and they see you coming the fourth day, they're going to say hi. And all of a sudden, because if you're going to be a freshman in the dorms next year, you're going to get a brand really fast. Are you the friendly person, or are you the quiet person? Do you have to be with your little clique? Because all of a sudden, when you become available, you'll be pretty amazed at who makes himself available. And life and success is a whole lot about network, about the people that you are attracted to and the people that are attracted to you. So make yourself available, because I think at the moment they're not always going to select you, but if you're available, it's pretty cool.
Phil, how can they do this during this lockdown situation that they're in? I mean, so many of them are not able to engage with their students, are not able to engage with their friends, their peers, but the culture is really going kind of crazy. How can they, what are some practical ways they can do this now?
Well, here's the deal. We have to decide what mindset we want through this COVID-19. We can say this is a really tough time, or we can say this is a fantastic time to be alive, because our mindset is going to determine how we wake up every morning. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You can have mindset. I got a buddy right now, 3 buddies right now have cancer. But one of them, he said, I don't like it when people say, how you doing? He said, I want him to tell me a joke, because he said, some days I suck, man. I got chemo in my system. He said, every day, I have one buddy that sends me a joke of the day. So what do? Now I started sending him a joke of the day. Dumb stuff like, what do you call a dog with no legs? It doesn't matter. He's not going to come to you anyway, right? What's the difference between broccoli and boogers? Little kids don't eat broccoli. I mean, they're just dumb stuff, you know? And what he told me, he says, it's so fun, because instead of going, how you doing? Well, still got cancer, man. I got chemo. And, you know, it's just those little moments that we can offer to people that just bring a smile. So think about this. When's the last time you actually wrote a handwritten note to somebody, folded it up, put an envelope, and mailed it to them? I dare you to do that, because check this out. I've been doing that about 4 to 5 times a week. And you cannot believe how many people said, man, do you know how long it's been since I got something besides a birthday card in the mail or a bill? Well, and think about that. If you're under 25, you might have to go ask somebody older than you, how do you actually fill out an envelope? Because you guys tweet. I mean, you know all the stupid stuff that you tease us about? The boomers, man, they are so illiterate when it comes to technology. Where, hey, child, you go fill out a check, all right? And then we'll see how illiterate you are. See, it's all generation stuff. But I'll bet if you ask a teacher or one of your older friends, could you help me fill out this envelope? They'll go, sure. And then when you leave, they'll laugh about you like you laugh about your parents who can't figure out how to make the TV work. It's just generational humor. But think about this. What if you said, I'm going to write 5 personal notes a week? Just, it doesn't have to be very long. But that person gets something in the mail and goes, oh my gosh, you cared. And then what if you said, I'm going to send 5 tweets by 5 every day? Just a note to someone. I'm just thinking about you. I hope you're doing all right. Do you know what that would mean to your grandparents? Do you know what that would mean to your aunt and uncle that you've seen 5 times in your life? Do you know what that would mean to that kid in your class that hasn't had any communication with anybody? And teachers, some of you are like, I'm so crazy busy. Can you imagine if that kid did enough research to get a letter to your house? Because think about it, if you send it to the school, they're not going to get it till August or January or something like that. But you Google somebody's name, and most of the time you can find out their mailing address. So there's little ways. It's like, I wish I had my Rubik's Cube with me, because there's so many little things. You take the Rubik's Cube, you turn a little bit, you're like, oh, that could work. Pick up the phone and actually call somebody. They'll be like, are you a stalker? Like, no, I'm the kid that sits 2 rows over from you. We've been texting for the last 2 days. I just want to hear you had a voice. What will they do? They'll be laughing like a dumb joke. But all of a sudden there's this connection. Maybe you're a sophomore in high school and you see them next semester. Guess who they're going to look for when they walk into class? It's going to be you. You're a sophomore in college. They come back in the dorms, and all of a sudden, guess what they're thinking? Hey, man, we're going out Friday night. You want to go? Sure. And all of a sudden, you've become available to them.
I'm glad you said that about writing a note. I think that Caden has been with us almost every week. That's been echoed almost every week by our guests, is the power of taking the time to just do old-fashioned note writing and sending it out to people. And I tell the story, too, of one of the most impressive young ladies that I have ever met. I knew she was going to be successful, and she went on and represented the FFA as their national president. And I met her way before that, and I could tell she was going to be successful. She sent me a handwritten note that was at my house within 24 hours of us meeting. And we met. I don't even know how she got my address, but it was that kind of power of doing that kind of sets people apart on that.
Can I share a story?
Yes, please.
So my daughter, when she graduated from college, she graduated from a little school in Southern California, and she decided she wanted to move to North Carolina. I said, why do you want to move to North Carolina? She said, Dad, I want to talk like those people. And so she and I drove out to North Carolina, and I had to leave to go to work. And she said, I want an accent. California, we have no accent. And all of us in North Carolina now, we want to talk like the people in Minnesota, right? You know, and we always have this idea, some other accent, you know, here's someone with a British accent or Australian accent. So she gets out here, and it was tough. She goes, Dad, I'm trying to find a job. I'm putting 40 to 50 hours a week. And those of you listen, that's what it takes, 40 to 50 hours a week to get a job. And it took her about 2 weeks. Finally, she got a job at Cracker Barrel, just working at the cash register just to make some money. And she's there, Dad, they're trying to promote me. And she got a job temp. I'm like, what's temp? She goes, I'm just working for 3 days to cover somebody at this little company, 80 people. So after the first day, she calls and says, how's it going? She goes, Dad, no one talked to me the whole day. I'm at the front desk. I say hi to them. They just walk by. I said, what are you going to do? Tomorrow I'm going to make some cookies. I said, why? And she goes, people love cookies. You make cookies, they're going to stop and talk to me. So she said, I'm going to put them out. So next day she calls and how'd it go? She goes, Dad, it worked. I laid this plate of cookies. I live 5 minutes from the office, so they were still warm. They smell great. Guy walks in, goes, those smell good. She goes, you should have one. He goes, well, my name's James. She goes, I'm Cheyenne, nice to meet you. And he takes the cookie, turns to walk away, and breaks it in half, because adults never eat a whole cookie, right? They act like they only get the calories of, you know, and so he goes to break it in half, but it doesn't break. It just folds. You ever had a cookie like that? And he goes, oh. Well, about 10 minutes later, this other guy comes, my buddy James said, your cookies are good. He said, my name's Terry. What's your name? And she said, all morning this is happening. People coming by, thank you. And all of a sudden, about 10 o'clock, this tall guy walks up. Says, hey, I hear your cookies are good. She goes, yeah. He goes, can I have 2? She says, no, just 1. He goes, okay. And he takes it, walks off. the gal at the desk across from her says, do you know who that is? She goes, no. He owns the company. And Shy goes, well, I own the cookies. You only get one. And they both laughed about it. It was kind of fun. Well, the next day she makes like lemon bars. Anybody ever had lemon bars? You know, they got the little white powdered sugar on it. And I said, third day, she goes, that was weird. They asked me if I'd stay another week. I guess the person's not coming back. I said, is that cool? She goes, Dad, I got to figure out some other kind of cookie to make. So every day she's making these cookies. And the next Friday he comes in and says, hey, we'd like to talk to you for a few minutes in my office. And she walks in and he sits down with her and the hiring manager and says, we're curious. Who told you to make those cookies? She said, nobody. She said, the first day I was here, nobody talked to me. It's really quiet around here. I thought the cookies might start some conversation. And he said, it really has. He said, remember Tuesday we had that family picnic? She says, yeah. He said, last year, like out of our 80 people, 20 showed up. Most of them stayed about an hour and left. This year, 75 of them came and they brought their family. And he said, just in a week you've been here, the culture's changing, because he says now people, they're talking to each other. First it was about the cookies and other stuff. He says, one guy, he used to eat in his car every day for lunch. He's been coming in and eating in the lunchroom. She says, oh, cool. And he says, we'd like to offer you a full-time job. And she said, and like, if we're going to the front desk, answer the phone, I don't think I want to do that. He says, no. We want you to be the director of our We Care and Give Back program. It's something we do to try to give our company time to go do community service. And she goes, yeah. She goes, I'd like to do that. And so I get this phone call and I'm speaking that day. So my phone rings and it vibrates. And so I get in the car and driving away and I listen to her voicemail. All it says, Dad, call me now. And I'm like, girls, don't do that to your dad, man. I was like, I got the Jeep loaded up, put my bow and arrow. I'm going to go get somebody. You're hurting my girl. And so I'm all of a sudden like, Shy, what's up? She goes, Dad. I'm like, come on, tell me. She goes, Dad, they offered me a full-time job. I'm like, who, Cracker Barrel? She said, no, the temp company. I said, I thought they were temp. She goes, I think they like the cookies. I'm like, well, what was really cool, that little company of 80 people, 6 months later was bought out by a company of 8,000 people. And they selected out of those 80 people who to take to the new company. And they pointed at her first. So you got to have her, because wherever she goes, she has an impact. And the owner of the 80 people, he stayed on. He kept telling people, she has initiative I've never seen before. And one of the things when I asked Cheyenne, she goes, Dad, my leadership teacher in high school always said, find something to do without being told. Just use your initiative. Well, when you think about how do you affect culture, I think if you just stop sometimes and look around, you're in a lunchroom, whether you're in college, whether you're in high school, whether you're an educator, who's the person by themselves? And just walk over and just say, hey, do you mind if I sit there? And don't wait for them to answer. Just sit down. They're not going to run you off. And if someone's sitting by themselves, just kind of go sit by them and say, hey, what's up? I'm kind of by myself. My name's Phil. How's it going? And most of them are not going to turn away from you. You're a freshman in college. How many days in a row do you want to eat by yourself? All you have to do is take your tray over, sit with someone. They're going to be so glad. That's making yourself available. But here's the thing I'd say is, if you want people to notice you, promote you, value you, use your initiative. Look around for things that need to be done. And practice today. When you get off this call, look around the house and see, if I did some little thing, what would my parent appreciate, my roommate appreciate, whoever you live with, whether it's putting the dishes away, whether it's taking the garbage out. I don't know what it is. I know this. I'm married. If I walk out right now into the kitchen, I bet some little thing I could do that my wife had on her list, but if I did it for her, she'd just appreciate it. That's the kind of culture I want to live in. That's the kind of culture I want to work in.
I can hear a lot of these students in their mindset right now. They're going, I love the stories you're telling. I love what you're telling us to do, but really what is the benefits? What's the benefits to me? What's the benefits to the school? You know, what's in it for me is what somebody is going to be saying.
Well, they're not on this call. Those people aren't on this call. The people that are on this call, they're about making our world better. That's who's attracted to you right now. The bottom line is, if it's good for me, if it's good for the world, if it's good for my neighborhood, it's good for me. That's the culture I want to be a part of. And I'm seeing a lot of faces nod, because, you know, if think about this, in high school, the worst class was the class either someone misbehaved or people just didn't talk. It was horrible when the teacher had to be like the sage on the stage, just talk the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, that joke, I can't handle it. But it's so much fun if kids raise their hand. And guys, think about it. When you're in second grade, everybody raise their hand. They fall out of their chair, pick me. By fifth grade, they're holding their arm up. By seventh grade, they're doing this. But by ninth grade, they got one finger up. By the time they're a junior, like, I'm not raising my hand, man. Because they're worried about the kid behind them who's going to say, hey, you dummy. Well, I love seniors because seniors, you think about it, you're a senior, you don't care about the kid behind you. You're like, I want to talk to the teacher. This is boring if it's just a sage on the stage, but it's the interaction. And so I think what you got to realize is when we engage in life, it does come back to us. When we're available to others, guess what? We're available to ourselves. I mean, you have to decide what the priority is going to be. Is the priority going to be about you? Because if it is, life's going to be a little bit tough. But the priority, Zig Ziglar, I think you guys have heard of that guy. Isn't he the one that said you can get anything you want if you help enough other people get what they want or need? I heard that. I met Zig when I was like 18 years old. He was speaking at some deal. And then I ran into him 2 more times over my career. And at restaurants, he stood up, looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and the redhead was with him. And he shook my hand. He looked at me. He was totally present for probably 15 minutes. And finally he goes, oh, I got to get back to my bride. But he said, Phil, this is it. Introduce me. And then I'd go off. And I was kind of embarrassed because I'm interrupting his dinner. He did everything, but he stood up, looked me in the eye, made me feel like I was the only person in the room. Now, some people say, how did that benefit Zig Ziglar? I don't know if it did, but it made Zig the kind of person he wanted to be. So guess what I do now? When I get a chance to meet somebody, I do the Zig thing, man. I stand up, look in the eye, introduce them to my wife, whatever I'm doing. I want them to feel like they're the only one in the room, because when Zig did that for me, oh man, it just made such a difference. And I think when you guys do that for others, whether it's in school, whether it's in college, whether it's at work, Miss Shelley, when you do that for an FFA kid, they think they are just, and we don't know what they go home to. But when you do that for the kid, whether it's at school or whether it's on a field trip in the back of that ugly white van that's got more smelly stuff, and those kids, they want in that van. They want to go on that trip because you make them feel like they're the only one in the room.
Our team, does anyone on the call have any other questions? Isaiah, anything? Oh, Caden, unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, sir. So my school is very it's diverse, but split into half. You know, you got one group of kids and you got the other group of kids, and we do not, come together. And I mean, personally, I always have tried to, try to get into the other side and bring the other side over to me. But how do I, as a student leader, get the whole school on board of starting to break down that wall? Because I know I cannot do it by myself. I know I'm going to need other people doing the same thing I am if we're going to do this, get my whole school together as one. So what's your tips of how to get other people onto the same mindset of trying to break that diversity and just bring everybody into one common ground?
Great question, Caden. That's super. I'm glad James is on this call because he'll be able to answer that for you. No, here you go. So here's the deal. First, number one, don't look at 100% as success. Okay, if you pulled the fire alarm at your school, everybody wouldn't go out. There's going to be that one teacher says, guys, this is not for real. Just stay in class. I mean, we laugh at that, but there's some truth to that. You guys so don't go for 100%. Are you a junior or senior? What year are you, Caden?
I'm a rising junior.
Rising junior. Very cool. So you got 2 years left. So think about this. Start small to go big, okay? So let's round it up. Let's say you have 500 kids in your school. Right now, you have an influence on a percentage of your half of the school. So who are the 5 or 6? Years ago, there was a commercial called When E.F. Hutton Speaks. E.F. Hutton was a stockbroker, and all the ads were, when that person speaks, everybody listens. They'd be on the bus, and somebody would say, yeah, E.F. Hutton told me, and everybody on the bus would stop and listen because they wanted you to have this idea. Well, you have E.F. Huttons at your school. They're the people who influence other people. Who has the most Twitter followers? On Friday night, who are the people check to see what they're doing to see, am I going to go to the dance? Am I going to go to the football game? Am I going to go to the party? Well, think about who are the most positive 5 E.F. Huttons that you have influence with. People that you're like, these are people they're positive, they have influence, okay? So let's say that you just sit down and invite them over for pizza this summer, maybe in August. Say, guys, this is what I'm thinking. Our school's divided in half, and every one of you have friends who are on the other side of the line. You know somebody, you're friends with them, you were little best friends in second grade. So what would happen if the 5 of us invited the 5 of them over, and maybe next week, and the 10 of us sit down and say, hey, what can we do to cause kids from each of our halves to come together? Maybe it's a pool party, maybe it's pizza, I don't know, maybe it's just we're going to sit together at lunch once a week. Some way, because think about this, everybody at your school is going to watch those 5 or 10 kids on each side. If you go back to the movie Remember the Titans, you had Gary, you had Julius. Some of y'all watched that. They were both powerful influences on their half of the school. Back then, 1971, they were bringing a black school and a white school together. So you think about that division, and it was new to the community. So the coach knew that if he could get these young men to connect, so he had them room together, all of a sudden they started telling each other their stories. So Caden, let's say you bring the 10 of you together, 5 from your side of the line, 5 from the other side of the line, whatever that means. Every school and every listener here interpret that different. And then you just said, hey, let's tell our story. There's an activity you can do, Caden, it's really easy, called One at a Time. So what I'd like you to do, those of you that are watching here, Ezekiel, Shelly, Caden, Isaiah, James, take yourself off mute. Put yourself, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you each to tell me one thing about yourself, something interesting about yourself, different. You can say, I'm a twin. You can say, I play basketball. You can say, I was born in Germany. Just one thing. We're just going to go across the line, and I'll call your name and then tell us one thing. And then the listeners, wherever they're all, get the idea of how this works. All right. So I'll go first, and I'll say, I love to play basketball. It's just something that I just go out and shoot baskets. It's just something I enjoy doing for fun. James, tell us one thing about you, please.
I'm a parent of 3 children.
Awesome. Isaiah, tell us something about you.
Play music in a family band.
Caden, tell us something about you.
I play guitar.
Okay, Shelly.
I was born in Maryland, but got to North Carolina as soon as I could.
Awesome. How about you, Ezekiel?
I'm a current FFA officer.
Very cool. Now we're going to go through one more time, so be ready. All right. Something else about me is I hitchhiked around the United States when I was in college. I wanted to see the country. I had no money. I went through 26 states and part of Canada. So how about you, James?
Oh, wow. I'm currently taking more classes at Clemson University.
Very cool. Isaiah?
Traveled to more than 12 countries.
Ooh, how about you, Kate?
I've hiked 150 miles of the Appalachian Trail.
That's awesome. Shelly?
I raise rabbits, and I'm working on developing a new breed.
Very cool. Zeke?
I raise poultry, and I'm working on developing a new breed as well.
So think about this. So you guys can put yourself on mute now. But Caden, imagine if you did that with those 10 kids, your 5 VF Huttons and the 5 on the other half of the school, and you guys just went around the circle 3 or 4 times. And then you said, hey, let's talk about dreams. And everybody tell us something they want to do someday they haven't done before. Maybe go to a certain concert, maybe live overseas, maybe some kids said, I've never been to Disney World. It's that simple. The third round of One at a Time is tell us something about you that most people don't know. No, wait a minute, check it out. What does that mean? Well, all of a sudden, somebody goes a little bit deeper. If I tell you something that you don't know about me, then I'm like, well, so I can tell you guys the first round, I broke my neck and my back in a car accident. I'm lucky, I still have my legs and all that, but I broke my neck in 2 places, my back in 3. It's not obvious when you see me. Well, each person going around the circle would share something. Can you imagine by the third time, all of a sudden people are sharing stuff pretty powerful? Well, so Caden, you got these people on 2 halves of the school who all of a sudden realize we have more in common than we have different. Well, think about that. They're like, you're pretty cool. Well, then guess what happens? Then you get up and everybody stays together, but you bring out some food. Because guess what food does? Food creates a sense of fellowship around food. Simple as this. We do breaking down the walls. We try to have, everybody's in a group of 8. So 200 kids divided by 8. There's 20 groups around the gym, 25 groups. We bring in 2 large pizzas per group. Everybody just gets a bottle of water. And we put the large pizzas. Well, guess what? When you take a piece of pizza, you got to touch someone else's pizza to rip it apart, right? So all of a sudden there's this hesitation like, how are we going to do this? Well, one kid will say, hey, you grab it, I'll grab it. And they start laughing and they start eating together. And then there's this sense of community that comes out of eating together. All of a sudden people start telling scar stories. Hey, do you have a scar? How did it happen? When did it happen? Or favorite movie. What was your all-time favorite movie? Oh, Princess Bride, or I love the Goonies, and all of a sudden there's this, and all of a sudden, do you see those differences, those 2 groups? All of a sudden start to lay over each other. And in an hour, hour and a half, because they've heard each other's stories. I love the quote, it's hard to hate someone whose story you know. You hear that? It's hard to hate someone, your story you know. Well, it's hard to appreciate someone whose story you don't know. And you stop and you think about, all of a sudden, those 10 students start to go, you're pretty cool. I like you. So next week, they go walking at school. If a teacher allows them to sit where they want, they're going to sit by this person because, wait a minute, we listen to the same music, or we like the same car, we want the same dream. And then all of a sudden, they go sit at a ball game together, and what happens. They're going to sit with their crowd. You're going to sit with your crowd. But what if the 10 of you said, hey, on Friday, first Friday school, all 10 of us are going to wear a red shirt, whatever your school colors are. And guess what happens then? They get their friends to do it, and now you can't tell who's who. And then you say, hey, once a week, we're going to get together at lunch. Well, all of a sudden, those 10 kids, well, maybe not all 10 have the guts, but maybe 8 of them do it. 5 from your group, 3 from their group, or 5 from their group, 3 from yours. And all of a sudden, more and more friends come together. Do you see, Caden, if you think you're going to get 100%, it ain't going to happen. But imagine by the time you graduate, it's 30 or 40%. Maybe some friendships will develop in that affect the culture of your school. Because really what you want is you want a place where everybody goes, I feel safe here, I belong here, I can learn here. That's the culture we want.
Anyone else have any questions for the group? Zeke, go ahead.
So normally under normal circumstances, it'd be pretty easy to accomplish team bonding with, say, like an officer team. But how can we encourage team bonding during this time that we're going through?
Great question, Zeke. That's a question a lot of teachers are asking. How do we develop connections virtually like this? Well, here's the deal. One thing, you guys, you have permission now to get together in small groups. Okay, you still want to be safe, whether you're wearing a mask or social distancing. But Ezekiel, if you and I lived in the same town and you said, hey, Phil, I had some questions, I might say, hey, meet me at the high school track. And we'll just walk 3 or 4 laps around the track. Well, guess what? First time we walk around the track, big deal. We're just talking. The second time, a little bit deeper. By the time you get to the 4th time, you're talking about some serious stuff, okay? Because if I ask you, how you doing, Zeke, by the time we get around the first time, now some of you are laughing and say, no, I don't want to walk around the track, but you might have a park in town. You might have a place, a trail. I live near Pittsboro, kind of Chapel Hill area, North Carolina. We have the Great Tobacco Trail, American Tobacco Trail. Used to be railroad tracks, and now they've taken the tracks up. I think it's 15 or 20 miles long. And just to meet somebody there, people do it all the time. So Zeke, imagine if you're an officer, maybe there's 10 officers, and you guys say, hey, you know what? I'm going to meet here. All 10 of you meet at the school and just go for a walk. Here's the thing you guys to talk about. Here's one I love, Zeke, is win, wish, or worry. What if you asked a kid in your organization, oh, you guys going to talk about 3 things. What's a win you've had recently, something that's gone really well? What's a wish, something that you wish would happen? And what's a worry you have? Well, think about this, Zeke. You're walking with a kid. You don't know him that well. And what if you guys started, the 10 of you officers stood in a circle, you did that one at a time thing as a large group. Just each one went around 2 or 3, 4 times. And you say, everybody's got a partner. And maybe if you're the president of the group, you assign kids to people you know they don't know. All right, go with this person. You have 20 minutes. Go for a walk. I want to talk about 3 things. What's a win you've had? What's a wish you had? And what's a worry? Guys, do you know how much conversation you can have in those 15 or 20 minutes? And then they come back to the group and say, hey, what'd you learn? What was something you learned about your partner you never knew before? And all of a sudden, someone says, man, Zeke, his win was he just got a job. He's working at Burger King. He's a Whopper flopper. And everybody's like, yeah. And all of a sudden, people are celebrating. That's your win. And then someone else, well, I learned that Michael's a little bit worried right now. His aunt, who he loves very much, has cancer at stage 1. She should be okay, but he's still worried about it. You see what comes out, and all of a sudden, this group bonding starts to happen. And there's, if you Google 20 great questions, there's all kinds of things like that that you can do to ask some questions. Is that a start to help you a little bit?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for the question.
Anyone else have a question?
I want to throw something out, James, if I can.
Yes, please.
One of the things I would encourage you guys to start thinking about now is, what do you want your priorities to be? Because your priority is going to create some implications. Okay, so a friend of mine chose at 17 that she wants to be a doctor. So I asked her, I said, well, aren't you going to be like 28 before you become a doctor? She goes, I'm going to be 28 anyway. I said, great. Something she didn't think about, when you make a choice, it always implies something. When I made a choice to be a speaker, it implied I'm going to get on a plane, sleep in hotels. So that was a choice I made. My brother, who thinks that's the dumbest thing ever, he has a job that he stays at home every night. Very different. So when my friend became a doctor, what that implied was she's going to have $200,000 or $300,000 in student loans, depending if she wants to be a specialist. So when she had kids, she didn't have the choice really to stay home because her student debt is large enough that she needs to work. She's absolutely comfortable with that. She puts her kids in childcare. But if you were thinking, I don't want to put my kids in childcare, that's no longer a choice. So as you're making some choices, always consider the implications. Now, how does it work for me? I have a friend who said, hey, my goal is to get $5 million in the bank. I said, why? He said, well, you're supposed to live in retirement on 4 or 5% of your worth. Okay. He said, so if I want to live on $250,000 a year, then I need $5 million in the bank. I said, awesome. He looked at me and said, how much do you want? I said, I've never really thought about his dollars in the bank. I want savings, so I want to retire someday, but I want the best photo album. He said, what do you mean? I said, when I get done with a trip, I put the pictures in a photo album, and someday I want to look back and I want to go, oh man, remember walking and hiking in Cinque Terre, little village in Italy? And remember when I was in Thailand and we got out to Phi Phi Island and we got a cab driver to get us a boat, and he went with us, and all these stories. And what I realized is the priority I had was, I want the best photo album that I could possibly have. Do I have savings? Absolutely. There'll be a day when I can't work anymore. I choose not to work. But that's what I would do at a young age. I'd think about what are the implications of my choices? Because Miss Shelley, who's an educator right now, she made a choice that allows her maybe not the highest income, but she's going to have a retirement that's solid, that's going to be there. Even right now during COVID, she's getting paid. Okay, that's pretty cool. The thing that she does get most summers is a week or 2 or 4 or 6 or 8, depending on how much commitment she has to FFA, how many different things she said yes to, but she has the potential to have perhaps 6 or 8 weeks off. Some of you, if you pick a career that requires 50 weeks a year, then as Isaiah said, what did you say? You've been to 90 countries or 60 countries? That's because your parents made a choice. This is what we're going to do, or you made that choice. So I would encourage you at a young age to consider the implications of some choices you make at 18 to 25 and how they might play out at 45 to 65. So that's just something I wanted to throw out, because sometimes I'm not sure we think about that. And if you consider that, I think it sets you up for some pretty cool choices as you get older.
Anyone else from the community have any calls, any questions that they wish to ask? Phil, how do they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about what you have available? Where can they reach you at?
1-800-HOT-DUDE. No, I'm teasing.
That's my number, dude.
That was already taken before I got there. I saw your name. You can get philboyte.com. I'm assuming it's somewhere on here. It's spelled correctly. My last name is Boyte. It'll put you to our company webpage, learningforliving.com, and all of our contact information there. We have a podcast that we do every week. I taped one yesterday with Mark Schumacher, who's a comedian, hilarious guy. Just talk about how do you bring humor into the classroom, into life right now with this virtual stuff. 2 weeks ago, we did it with Heather Garcia, talking about how do you stay optimistic and positive during a time like this. And it was so good that I had to do 2 sessions, because I was like, my word, you have so much more. And she talked about being a bright side thinker. There's always a bright side to something. So those are some things that we have that people can tune into.
And on his website as well, you can download the first chapter of your book, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I trust you. I don't go to my website. It's like my own phone number. What's my phone number? I don't know. But I have a team that does a lot of that things. I believe it's there, yes.
And actually, in the chat box, because I have been perusing through it, I am uploading it to the chat box right there. So you guys can download it from the chat box if you want to, if you don't want to have to go there. But go to his site. You want to go to his site because you want to see the things that they have to offer there. So any closing comments from any of our community? Anyone?
Just want to thank you for a great time together, Phil. Nice mission. This is Wesley Jones from Panama. This is in Central America.
Welcome. I love Panama. I was scheduled to be at the International School of Panama in March, but guess what? You guys are quarantined, staying home. So cheers.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
When you talk about being the bright person, how would you say someone needs to be a bright person? What would be what they need to do?
Well, it's bright side thinking. There's always a dark side, a bright side. When you look at something, there's always like, okay, on the bright side. I think it's a mindset, Madeline. I think it's when we make a decision that we're going to say, okay, I can get all caught up in a lot of think about high school, the drama. You walk in at lunchtime, you'll walk up to your group of friends, and all of a sudden, I can't believe what she said. There's triggers, right away. You just turn and walk. I got to grab a drink. Because if you get caught up in that, your energy goes to that. And you get negative, you caught in that. So you have to be thoughtful. What am I going to give my energy to? So if you're going to give your energy to the negative stuff, you're going to get caught up on that side of it. If you say, I want to be intentional about looking for the bright side, you walk in the house. Some days it's just tough. Mom and dad aren't in a good mood, or maybe there's only one parent there. Your little brother's into your stuff, and you're frustrated. But if you say, okay, it's frustrating this, what's the bright side? And it's just training your brain to look at that side, because it's going to be there if you look for it. Try this. Don't think about a green banana. What's the first thing you did? You thought about a green banana, right? Because I said don't. Well, so if I say don't think about negative stuff, we think about negative stuff. So if you can train yourself, anybody here ever bought a car? You're like, I never knew there were so many red trucks in town until you buy one. You see them everywhere. So if you make the decision, Madeline, I want to be a bright side thinker, you'll start to see things that way. And guess what? You'll attract people who are that way. And it gets easier.
Anything else from anyone of the group?
I guess one kind of final wrap-up question maybe, where you're talking about as you make choices, consider the implications. So kind of along those lines, as we're kind of in this age where, either graduating high school or getting to that point in college, asking the question, like, what was I put here to do? What is my purpose? I know that's a topic you could probably spend a lot of time talking about, but what would be like a biggest tip you'd have to people who have that question?
If they ask themselves, what is their purpose? I think I have not done much meditating in my life. I'm trying to learn. I'm a monkey mind, my brain. If I sit down, it goes everywhere, like some of y'all are saying, yeah. And so if I can meditate and just sit in that, what matters to me? What do I care about? But I would learn to ask questions of people who are older than you and just listen. Don't defend, don't explain, just ask them. I was playing volleyball on the beach about 2 years ago, and this older guy was playing really good. Older now. I'm 58. I was 55 at the time. So he was 71, I found out. He's playing beach volleyball and diving and all this. And I said, so you're 71. I said, what advice would you give me? He paused. He looked at me. He said, just remember, life's like the old game Chutes and Ladder. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. He said, don't get too caught up in either one. If you celebrate your successes too much, celebrate your failures too much, he said, just like riding a bike, just keep pedaling. And he walks off. I asked his wife later, what does he do? He goes, well, he's the finance minister in this part of Canada. He could have given me financial advice. All he said was there are going to be ups and downs. I'm 58. This guy's 71. Listen to those people, because every once in a while they're going to say something that you're going to hold on to. It's just going to be a little nugget. And don't defend. Don't prove that you're smart or you've read stuff. At 25, anybody older than you is going to be thrilled that you even asked a question. And then if you listen longer, they'll tell you a little bit more than you expected. And that I think that's where you'll find your why. That's when someone like Wesley, he just stuck his head in there. I don't know how old he is, but he's older than you are. He's got some experience. See, we can read and get people's knowledge, but experience comes from figuring it out yourself. So you'll hear these stories and go, okay. And then doesn't mean you don't become a doctor. It doesn't mean you don't want $5 million. It just means I understand the implications and I'm okay with it.
Well, guys, I want to thank the community for their participation today. I want to thank the online community that's watching us through Facebook. We've been kind of monitoring the numbers off to the side, and it's the most active views that we've had so far of this, and a lot of them have been commenting, showing their likes and their things online as well. Next week, be back again next week. Phil, if you could say if you had one sentence to say about next week's guest, Mr. Rhett Laubach, what would you say?
Well, first thing, tell him happy anniversary. He's getting married the next week or so. I think maybe
he's getting married this weekend.
Yeah, day after tomorrow, I thought. And just say, hey, dude, just be amazing, be awesome. I love Rhett Laubach. He is just a wonderful human being. He can play guitar like you can't believe, y'all. Just say, grab your guitar. Ask him to play a riff, because the guy, he can sing, he play a guitar, and yeah, he's a good man. So
he'll be with us next week. You guys will be getting information about that. And I want to thank everybody. I want to put everybody on gallery view and everybody wave goodbye. Wave, everybody. Goodbye. Take yourselves off and wave.
Be good.
Be good, guys. All right. Thank you, guys. And we're off.